Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today, I've got the fabulous Richard Upson with me, and I am going to ask him the question I ask absolutely everybody. Hey, Richard, why did you become carnivore?
I was vegetarian, pescatarian for about 32 years. I went vegetarian in 1986, various circumstances, mainly around animal cruelty. The carnivore thing came around about 2000 and I think 2018, 2019, and that was Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson. Saw Jordan Peterson, then I saw Sean Baker, and you kind of what? Because you what it's nuts. But so I started looking into it, and of course, then I stumbled into well, I think initially Paul Saladino was around, but I kind of fell on Bart Kay, who I really like, and I really like over the years his knowledge, and then it was January 2019, I think, and I started noticing the connections between food and mental health. And it was a Saturday. My partner's a really good cook, which doesn't help anything. But she's a really good cook, and she made a meal on a Saturday night, and it was rice, chicken, all the vegetables, everything. Woke up on the Sunday morning and had that anxiety, and I just thought, right, I'm going to go carnivore. So I slammed over on the Monday, which is not what you're supposed to do. Ask Bart. Caused me a few problems for a few weeks, but I just felt completely different. That initial kind of high, I suppose. So that's how I went. That's how I went carnivore. Pretty reasonably strict. This year is a different thing. We can come to that later. There's reason for that. So way back, there are a number of conditions I had, which I've listed. I forget what they were. Over the last 30 years, I had Raynaud's disease, which, if anybody knows, if your the way I understand it, if your core temperature drops below a certain point, you lose the feel. I just basically lose the feeling in my hands, completely. My hands are utterly useless. It could be the middle of the summertime and the rain comes down and I get cold and bang, I can't use my hands. And then there's a tingling when it gradually the feeling starts to come back. I know other people have different symptoms, quite a bit worse, but that was what it was for me, which is very debilitating and makes you paranoid of cold weather. So I had that. I had bursitis in my hips, which occasionally would cause me problems. That developed over the last few years. And that would just kick in, just like somebody stabbing you with a knife. So I kept a stick on the banisters just in case sometimes. Kidney stones, had those in the 90s. Tinnitus from playing a very loud guitar way too much. I thought. I had an injury to my right big toe, and for a couple of years, I was walking around at work limping because I couldn't lift my right toe, and I was starting to get arthritic symptoms in my wrists because I play guitar, getting very frustrated because I was starting to get kind of arthritic pain in the last joint on my middle fingers, on both of them, which was very frustrating. I don't have Raynaud's now. If I do, it's a very mild tingling at the end of the fingers ever. I haven't had an attack in 5 years since I started the carnivore. And I have to qualify that by saying that I smoked up till the beginning of this year. So the smoking, I thought it was the smoking, but it didn't seem to make any difference. I haven't had any kidney stones for a long time. I had those in the 90s. Tinnitus got pretty bad at one point. That's still there, but mild. I can hear it, but it doesn't bother me really at all. I can even lie in bed now in the quiet and not think, God, my ears are ringing. Anxiety levels are way improved. It's like I used to have. I did have pretty bad depression years and years ago when I'm in my early my 20s. No, that's gone. I don't really get depressed. Not in the same way. Like Churchill said, black dog got up, just run off, walked away. I think it got bored. So I get, I still get a level of anxiety, a little bit, but and I don't burn in the sun. That's the common one that everybody says. Anyway, that's another thing. So the big one was the back at the end of the 80s, start of the 90s. I can't remember the exact year, but as everybody always says, if you can remember the 80s, you weren't there. So that's true. I had to find a job quickly in London, and I became a cycle messenger. I managed to blag my way into being a cycle messenger. I hadn't ridden a bike for years, didn't have any of the gear, just had a cheap bike. But I stuck at it. I had terrible trouble with saddle sores, really bad trouble for quite a long time. Couldn't really find a solution, and to the point where, and this is quite graphic, and I know that, I would be bleeding and I would have to get on the bike in the morning, not able to sit down for the first 20 minutes or so, maybe, because till the adrenaline kicked in, because I had to work and you only got paid by the job. The busier you were, the more money you earned. That's the nature of the game then. I don't know what it's like now. So yeah, quite often blood, very difficult to deal with, painful. So I was kind of a messenger on and off for about 3 years. I really got addicted to cycling as a result. I mean, we were doing 60, we surmised we were doing about 60, 70 miles a day. But I really got addicted to cycling. The saddle sores, I learned gradually to deal with a bit better as I went, as I learned more about cycling and about the right gear and everything, and became more proficient at the job eventually. Hard saddles, minimum amount of contact possible. You'd think you'd go the other way. You'd think, well, you need a soft saddle, and no. I think you would equate them with bed sores in a sense, maybe, where people lying in bed for a long time get sores, possibly. It's friction. And then so the end of the 90s, I've been dealing with this problem. One of the saddle sores got infected. So I had to go to A&E, and they put me straight into surgery and cut a 1/4 inch hole in my left buttock. That left quite a major scar tissue on the left buttock. That just has caused me problems for years. I moved from London back to my hometown in 2001, I think, and immediately started a job with a courier company where I was driving 12, 15 hours a day all over the country, and had to stop it about 4 or 5 months in because, again, blood, bleeding. If I tried to sit down, if I sit on the couch the wrong way for too long. So what I'm saying is, imagine if you can't sit down without having to think about it. This is how it was for years. So if I had an office job or I was trying to sit down, long distance driving caused the same problem, basically because of the scar tissue. So that, I thought that was it. So I hadn't ridden a bike since 2001. Carnivore sorted that out. Gone. I've got a bicycle and I drive a van for a living. Now, I don't know what to say to that, really. If the carnivore diet causes inflammation, I don't see how, because it's done completely the opposite. I don't have any arthritic joints anymore. Just a touch in that joint there, probably from playing. I can lift my right toe. My hips, I get a little bit of trouble, but not anything really at all. I can sit down as much as I like. Can drive as far as I want. I don't ride the bike as much as I'd like to, maybe. I can ride the bike. If I cheat too much, it comes back. And then I know that I've been eating too much of the wrong stuff. And that comes round to what I was saying about what we were discussing about self-sabotage and addiction.
What triggers it?
Okay, I think I think addiction is linked slightly. A lot of the time is linked to trauma. I think I've got a bit of PTSD from a quite severe head injury I had back in '86. Around about the same time I went vegetarian. I was really bad concussion. I wasn't the same person afterwards. Other people may not think that. They think, oh, it's just Rich. He's always been Rich. But in my head, I wasn't the same person. It took me a number of years to really get over it because it was quite traumatic.
Was it an accident then? Was you in an accident?
No, it was a beating.
Oh, right.
10 on to 1, which isn't really very fair. But there you go. The weird thing about it is, it's over the years, a number of times I've banged my head accidentally, and the symptoms of the concussion come back. So I go into some. The last time it happened was last year. I actually banged my head in the house accidentally one day. Went to work the next day, and then my boss, he got one of my co-workers to come out in the van with me because I think he thought, what's going on with Rich? You know, I didn't know. I'd forgotten, but I was behaving strangely, apparently. But apparently I do behave strangely. It's almost like the concussion comes back. It's really odd. So there's obviously a trauma connected there. And I think I self-sabotage quite a lot. I'm quite addictive in nature. I don't know whether that's a creative bent, whatever. I don't know. Artistic, I think it's a bit of an excuse, but there you go. My discipline slips easily.
I think, I mean, what happened to you, I can imagine I would be pretty scared of banging my head. And if I did bang my head, exactly what you just said, that sort of, oh, is it going to come back? And then lo and behold, it did at one of your jobs. Yes. And that is, and I've had this conversation quite a few times. People that have these sort of problems, you don't know because you don't know, because for you, it's normal. Something's happened, it's triggered. And then someone outside of you will say, you're acting strange. And you'll do exactly what you just said just then, by the way. Oh, am I? Oh, yes, I probably am. Yeah. And
the first time it happened was back in, again, the end of the 90s. I was when I lived in London, my previous partner. And we were setting up an exhibition, and somebody dropped a piece of wood on my head. And my boss at the time, he said, right, you need to go home. I was like, no, I'm fine. But he said, no, you need to go home. That was quite a knock. And I don't feel comfortable. I think you need to go home. Okay, so I went home.
I don't really know what to say about that. So I'm going to move on. The saddle sword is just for people that are listening on the audio podcast. Richie's just sitting there happy as Larry. So, if you've... Yeah. In fact, it's a new thing for me to come across, because I was listening and I was thinking, wow, that is actually more of a problem than I would imagine, because I have the reverse. People that sit a lot, when I first meet them, because they're so overweight or unhealthy, and they want to get out of a chair. So that's sort of where I'm programmed. You're the first person, I would say, I've ever heard say, imagine what it's like that you can't sit down.
Yes, it's a very weird one. Sitting down was just always something I had to be really aware of, really conscious of for years, because if I didn't sit correctly, or if I fell asleep on the sofa in the wrong position, or it would be a real issue, and it's really uncomfortable. And I know, and it's very embarrassing because of it's on your left buttock. So that's not something you really talk about to anybody. Oh, hey, So this is why I was but anybody, this is what I mean. I don't look any different really. I've never been overweight really. I've always been skinny. So I don't look any different to anybody who knows me, who's known me for any length of time over the years. There's people who've known me since way back when, you'll still see. So nobody else would really notice possibly any difference. But I know,
yeah.
sorry, but I know that my joints have healed, bursitis has gone away.
The biggest thing there is you've gone from not being able to sit to being able to sit, and your saddle soreness has gone. I mean, a great list there. You said your hip issues are less. I mean, you use dramatic language, like, you know, you felt like you were being stabbed with a knife, and now you're just sort of, well, it's there, it's a little bit. Kidney stones you had in the 90s, you've not got now. The wrist is better. You can play guitar. And I know this is the first time you've ever done a podcast like this, and you know, you said to me before we started that, you know, you hadn't done one before and you was a bit apprehensive and you got notes and all that. And I think once it took you 5 minutes. Now, somebody that's got an anxiety problem probably wouldn't do this in the first place. And secondly,
no.
within 5 minutes would be like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. So
I just felt it was important to broach the subject because I've learned a lot from people like you and Bart, and you know, initially the justifications no, that's the wrong word. The mechanics involved in why it's what you would call species appropriate diet. There's obvious things like the isotope data that Bart talks about. Vitamin C. Why don't we make our own vitamin C? The one that, you know, all carbohydrates turn to glucose. You don't get told that by anybody. And I don't like being lied to, basically. I really don't, by authority. I'm not great with authority, and I don't like this appeal to authority. If they've got a letters after their name, then they must know what they're talking about. No. Why do we do this? We open ourselves up to being basically lied to. But I don't know for what reason. Probably money, profit, personal status. But I don't like it. I don't like being lied to. So I will go down a rabbit hole until I find out what the truth is. And it just makes sense. But I've also learned that, to my own benefit, there's no point in preaching to anybody else because I don't have letters after my name, and I'm just rich, you know. And I get that. So I probably don't know much about what I'm talking about when it comes to nutrition and stuff. So I get that. But I don't know about you, whether you agree with this, but you see everybody completely differently.
Once you start eating this way, and once you've realised, I would say that I'm going to use a biblical reference. The scales have been removed from my eyes since I was 50. I mean, I'm 59, so I'm trying to catch you up. And I question everything, and I can give you a really good example. I'm not saying whether, you know, I don't want to get a political debate going now, but you know, there was a newscast and they said, climate change is affecting California because they've had a tropical storm for the first time in 84 years. Yeah. And I immediately thought, well, that means they had one 85 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, so there was no cars and all that sort of stuff. So I'd never have thought that way. I'd never have questioned something on the news. I would have just accepted what they said without really listening. And I think when it comes to nutrition, in fact, if you look at what you said about the saddles, right, that's counterintuitive, isn't it? You even mentioned that.
Yes.
You said a smaller saddle, you know, and not cushioned and hard. And that is counterintuitive.
It is.
And when you come to this way of eating, you've been led to believe what you're doing is wrong and you're brainwashed that way. But I always bring it back and say, well, hang on a minute. You go and look at a cow in a great big field eating grass, and that's apparently bad for the planet. But if you have a monocropped vegetable, you know, from under plastic and with plastic chemicals and pesticides on it, that's apparently good for you, even though it's in Spain and I'm in England. And when you actually break it all down, eating salmon, eating eggs, eating butter, it's obviously more natural, and I actually feel that we should start calling veganism, the unnatural vegan diet, and this a natural, just a natural way of eating, because
we don't look in. Yeah, I agree. We don't look into anything. I was vegetarian for pescatarian about 32 years. I didn't know anything about crops, how they're grown. I mean, I'm still with this with Becky, who was the original person who, on the animal cruelty bit, I don't agree with factory farming and any of that. I think it's, but the amount of animals that are killed to grow crops. But you learn, somebody, you hear somebody like, I don't know, Ted Nugent, just for a controversial figure. I remember seeing him interviewed with Joe Rogan, and he just listed out the hundreds of different animals and insects that are killed to grow a simple crop. And you think, well, because they're, as they say, because they haven't got big doughy human eyes like we have, it doesn't matter. We're not worried about them. It's a bit hypocritical to some of these people, but again, we're easily led, aren't we? And we're easily, we all like to have a cause. So I understand completely. I get that. You have to.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are there. The vegetable farming kills 7 billion animals a year, and I mean, I'll put references in the description for people, and it's just. I mean, just the Smithsonian said that, and they're pretty mainstream, that when you look at agricultural pesticides, they probably account for about 670 million just birds dying. So yeah, and I get also what you said there, which you slipped in. I don't agree with factory farming, and that's why I said if you see a cow in a field eating grass, that's great. That's what they should be doing. Chicken should be free. Battery chicken farming is pretty despicable, and I think that's the thing. And the problem is what you said. Many vegetarians or vegans are so removed from the fact that animals die to protect plants. I mean, that's the nub of it. That's what a pesticide intentionally does. They can't see it, and is that I think it's also because there's a step in between. It's not direct. You're not given, a carrot with the bugs that died, thankfully, to stop it eating the carrot.
No, I agree with you. I think, and I'm not having a go at anybody because I just brainwashed as well. I mean, I think we're all brainwashed. And the other thing as well, you could take that to eating carbohydrates. I mean, everybody I know, and I'll probably get some pushback for this, but everybody I know finds any excuse they can to justify eating either a balanced diet or a wide range of carbohydrates, basically. It's like, well, okay, I get that, and we all like to enjoy our food, but the thing is, I can't, because I know that if I do, the problems will come back. So I can't. So I'm pretty much beef and salt. And then I'll cheat once a week, or but and then I might again self-sabotage, and if I'm driving a long distance, I'll have a flapjack or something. Boredom, isn't it? Sitting there with the radio. I like driving. This is good. But you can try and convince people, or try and say to people, look, like people who want to lose weight. Well, do you know about the Randall cycle? Or why don't you go away and look into it? It might trigger something in your head and make you think, oh, okay, maybe that's why I'm putting on weight, and why don't you try lowering a low carb diet or something? But people won't do it unless they've got a really good reason. I think people, it's so hard. We're so brainwashed over so many years, all of us. I'm just used to going down rabbit holes, I think, and so it's no problem for me to say, "Oh, I was wrong. I was wrong about that," or
and I think you hit the nail on the head, because people are quite visual. If you'd have been, let's say, you dropped, 50 pounds doing this, that for people is more convincing, obviously noticeable, than all the things you were talking about. You know,
Yeah.
the hip pain and the saddle soreness and the anxiety and all that, which is so abstract to some people, and they probably don't really believe it. They might just think, well, you're older now and you're more chilled out, you know. But like you say, the inflammation is definitely less from what you're saying. You know,
it's I wouldn't have thought I was inflamed. I wouldn't have thought I had any inflammation. I just assumed that the scar tissue was causing the problem. I just assumed that it's a scar, it's in the wrong place, and it's always going to be a problem. But it was obviously I obviously was inflamed, even though I didn't. You know, to look at me, you wouldn't have thought I was. But there was chronic inflammation. But I don't know what was causing that, whether it was grains or whether it's some other toxin in a plant, or I don't know. But it's gone. That inflammation has gone. The scar tissue doesn't really cause me any issues anymore, and that's just bizarre, because I thought that was it for the rest of my life. If you see what I mean?
Yeah, and you attribute that to carnivore.
Yes, utterly down to carnivore. It's utterly down to cutting out plants, vegetables, and fruit, and eating, I'd say 90% just meat. I don't really have eggs. I've noticed I react to eggs now. I've managed to cut out cheese. I was eating a lot of cheese. That's gone. So now most nights I just stick a steak in the air fryer, you know, and knob of butter and loads of salt. It's great.
Sounds lovely. I mean, there's two big takeaways, and I mentioned one. There's obviously a lot more than this, but the two big takeaways I got was obviously that first one talked about sitting down, which most people just take for granted.
Yeah.
But the other thing you said was about Raynaud's, and it said you said it makes you paranoid in cold weather.
Yes.
So if you're in Britain, that's 4 to 5 months of the year.
Yes, that's right. So that affects your behaviour as well. You know, I don't like the cold anyway. I like summer. I'd happily live in Morocco, 35 degrees, perfectly happily. I love the heat. I don't like the cold, but I was paranoid about cold weather. Paranoid about getting cold because of Raynaud's. And that I don't get that anymore. Again, since I changed my way of eating, you can't put it down. I can't attribute it. I don't take any pharmaceuticals for one I forgot to say. I had a TIA about 6 years ago. So a visual TIA. I can never say what it is. A mini stroke though. And then they tried to put me on statins and aspirin every day. And I did that for 2 months and then thought, no, I'm not doing that. So I was being nudged in the direction of going down the rabbit hole anyway. Before I saw Jordan Peterson and Sean Baker, I was already thinking, wait a minute, I don't want to take pharmaceuticals for the rest of my life. I said to somebody the other day, I said, I'm going to be the first person I know to get to 70 without taking any pharmaceuticals, if I can. I said, I'll set myself a target, because everybody around me has got a problem. I'm not saying I haven't got any problems, but everybody around me has got a problem, or is developing a problem.
Yep. Whenever you do a form or something, I get this. If I have to fill something in and ask, and one of the questions is, what medications are you taking? And I just say, well, none. Everybody, really? Like that? And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't take any. And I think that's a really good target to say, to get to 70, not need any pharmaceuticals. I think, I'm gonna adopt that myself.
Well, you've got to have some kind of target, and it's a random target. And my stepfather is having to sit there and put the tablets into the boxes, for every day of the week. And it's an industry. I'd rather not take the tablets. I'd rather be because all the side effects as well. I mean, my mother, they were always constantly having to change the one tablet because it was clashing with another one, and then juggling it around, and it's awful. It's terrible. I'm not saying that nothing's going to get me. Something's not going to get me. Maybe it will. My dad died at 66 from esophageal cancer. Of course, he gave up smoking 8 years before that, and everybody was like, "Oh, it was smoking got him in the end." And I was like, "Well, hold on, he gave up 8 years ago, so maybe." But you can't say that. You can't. There's no. There might be a correlation in a sense, but it wasn't lung cancer. It was esophageal cancer.
Yeah. Well, it could be a factor, I would say, but you can't rule anything out because you can't prove cause.
No.
In that instance, and like you say, it gave up 8 years ago. So you'd imagine that there would be no, there'd be no progression. And at that point, you didn't have any sign of it. So yes, it's pretty fascinating, I think. Now, you said, Rich, no one's going to listen to you, but they will because they'll watch this video. And I wondered if you had any sage advice for say, somebody's sitting on the fence about carnivore, and they did come to you and they said, what would you, how would you stop me being on the fence? What would you say about trying carnivore?
Got nothing to lose. And you might actually find that. Okay, so Bart always says, don't flip, just gradually. I would say that if you're going to try it, don't suddenly go, right, I'm not going to eat any more carbs, because it's not good, really. But if you have any kind of I cannot believe the amount of medical conditions that I see every day on Facebook or YouTube or your interviews. There was one with, I can't remember, Low Carb Life, I think is the guy. And he was interviewing a guy who had rheumatoid arthritis, and it disappeared 6 days after he started carnivore. There's so many Crohn's disease, so if you've got a problem, try it. These older people who start to get what you call it, bone density problems and breaking bones, and there's the problem with bone loss, bone density. I can't remember what it's called right now. And then it just disappears. So I would say if you've got nothing to lose. But I understand that it's the idea that any of this could be caused by a plant. But I agree with what Anthony Chaffee says, and it's a bit harsh, but plants are trying to kill you. They are. They have been, and I agree with him that there's an arms race. It's been going on since the beginning. They are inventing, or not inventing, but evolution is coming up. Sorry?
They're evolving, aren't they?
Evolving all these ways of, because they don't want you to eat them. So once you get down that rabbit hole, you start thinking, wow, because we're just brainwashed into thinking that you've got to have a balanced diet, eat the rainbow and all that. Utter rubbish.
I'm glad you said rubbish. I didn't want to end with a swear word there. But yeah, the osteoporosis is the word you were looking for with the bone.
Thank you. That's the word, yes. I mean, just just so many different conditions pop up on Facebook groups or YouTube interviews that people have either cured or have gone into remission. It's bizarre. But
and you're one of those people, because you said about the inflammation, the saddle soreness. There you are. You've sat down with me for 45 minutes.
Yes.
Don't look.
I'm grateful to you for letting me do that, because I was nervous about it, because it's not the best. Like I say, it's quite an embarrassing condition. I'm also hoping that any other cyclists out there, serious cyclists, because there are a lot out there, who have problem with saddle sore, maybe think, oh, okay, that's interesting. maybe that's how you get rid of them. Go carnivore.
Do you have a social media presence? Do you have anyone? Do you have anywhere that people go to follow what you're doing, or do you not bother with that?
No, not really. I would promote the band, Burnt Out Wreck, because my singer would be horrified if I didn't. 3 albums down. So if you want to go and check out a classic rock band, do that. So I'm just grateful that there are people like you on YouTube who make this content, because it is spreading. The word is getting around. People that I work with, my friends, all thought I was completely nuts. Even my partner, Nikki. I mean, I think she thought I had a screw loose when I started this. She's 10 years younger than me. She's a mad cyclist, very fit as a fiddle, goes to the gym every day. Shames me, frankly. But now she's low carb. She follows, what's the lady's name? Peltz.
Mindy Peltz, yeah.
Mindy Peltz, people like that. And she gets it. I think because she's seen what's happened to me. So it spreads. I think my next door neighbour's carnivore as well. I'm not sure if he wasn't. He was. There are people out there, and people notice. They notice. So.
Now, I'd secretly kept recording, by the way. Do you mind if I put that in? If I sneak that little bit into the?
I don't mind. I'm way in now, so whatever you put in, it's up to you. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, no, I need your permission because I said I'd stopped, but because you were anxious, I thought it'd be nice to get something. I might even put that at the beginning of the video.
I wasn't sure which way I would go. I wasn't sure whether I'd just clam up but actually I suddenly. It's all.
Yeah, you got there. And I mean, I'll let you take your time. One thing I would also say, and this is really rubbish, but you'll get it because, you're in a band, which you have to promote. If you have a picture of you playing the guitar, I'm thinking of the YouTube thumbnail will be something like Carnivore Rocks His World or something,
Yeah, that's fine. You could do that. I could send it. Yeah. I could do that, yeah. Have you got where would I send the pictures to?
Just email it to me.
Okay, yeah, I can send you a picture. That'd be great.
Yeah.
It's I wouldn't normally walk around with a t-shirt saying Burnt Out Wreck on it, I'll be honest with you, because I am 61 and kind of ironic really, but that's the name of the band. So I thought, well, if I'm gonna do this, then I better wear the t-shirt, because
it's difficult to see, to be honest. It's the wording on it.
That's all right.
But send me as much as you can, Rich, and it would just be great because it'll go out. You've got a nice way of talking. You're nice and calm, which is good. You sound slightly like Michael Caine, which the Americans will pick up on.
My father, I was born north of London in Enfield in Middlesex, and we lived there till I was 12. I live in Malvern in Worcestershire now. Moved here when I was a kid. Then in '82, I went back to London for 20 years. My father was an English teacher, and I was never allowed to have an accent when I was a kid. But 20 years in London, I just sound like a Londoner, I think. I can't help it now. Even though I live in the Midlands, that's never affected me in any way, accent-wise. So I think that's where it comes from.
Has anyone ever said that to you, though?
No, but it's probably comes from a few years on the building sites and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, you're very nice to listen to. It's a nice voice, which is you're in a band, and it's all about how how you're perceived, isn't it, and how you sound.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, communication is music, really. For me, I mean, that's my thing.
Wow, that was a fabulous interview. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you like that sort of thing, I recommend you watch this one next.